Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to talk about brushes, my favorite brushes, what I use them for, and whether I can recommend them. Most of my brushes, actually all of my brushes, are low cost, and yeah, maybe that should change in the future, but I've never actually felt the need or the urge to spend a lot of money on my brushes. I'm not a makeup artist. I do it on myself, for myself, and I don't want to go there. I'm just now getting into spending 100 euros on a palette, so let's not go into really expensive makeup brushes. But I thought I'd guide you through it, and specifically for me, important things are eye brushes for hooded eyes and small eyes, and easy to use face brushes. I have a lot of brushes that I collected over the years, and I'm just gonna show you this now. This is my spares. So these are the brushes that I use when my daily makeup brushes are dirty and I don't have time to clean them, or when I want to do some very colorful look or glittery looks. Then I use some of these eye brushes, for example. I also have a spare here, and these face brushes are either shapes that I used to love and I don't use on a daily basis anymore, but that is actually something that sits on the side and is not brushes that I use regularly. My favorite brushes live on my desk, and this is the tub, I just threw one out, of my daily face brushes. And then I have two eye brush tubs that I use on a daily basis. And the reason why I have so many in use, let's say, is that I prefer not to wash my brushes all the time, so I can use many. And I like to wear color, so I don't want to have to clean my brushes in between every use. That's just not the way it works for me. Cleaning brushes is very important, especially if you do makeup on other people. Then you should clean them every time the brush touches a skin. But for myself, I take some time in between washing them, and especially my face brushes, I tend to reuse continuously. I wash more often my brushes when I am using makeup on a daily basis than, of course, when I'm using makeup like in this quarantine, once a week, let's say. But let's start from the face brushes, because I find that that's the easiest and the smallest category for me. And I'm gonna go through these because these are really my daily brushes, and then I'm gonna give you a few alternatives if these are either not available to you or you want something else. I'm gonna start with my foundation brush. My favorite foundation brush is the Real Techniques Expert face brush. It is a synthetic brush. This is what the cross section looks like, so it's not completely round, but a little bit oval on this side, and on the top it is tapered. It is quite a dense brush, so it doesn't have a lot of give, but I find that it applies, as you can see, it applies foundation in a swirling motion, both as in a stippling motion, very well. I don't find I get streaks with it. If you compare it to its brother, the buffing brush, that is this guy right here, the buffing brush is a little bit rounder, but also a little bit softer, so it has a little bit more give. And I don't love it the same way as I love the, what is it called again? Expert face brush. This is my favorite foundation brush. Another option would be the Zoeva 102 Silk Finish, but again, to me, this is a little bit too soft and has too much give. Then powder brushes. I am using and loving the big powder brush by Nabla Cosmetics. This is what it looks like. It's a big paddle, but it's quite fat, I want to say, like, because it's quite fluffy here, and it has a nice give, but it keeps the shape. So when you apply it on the skin, you can really press the powder in, and this means you will get a little bit of a greater amount of powder on your face. If you want less powder on your face, I would go with something more fluffy, like for example this Real Techniques powder brush, this is much more fluffy, so you can actually really just tap powder on your face. Lighter application because it's a bigger brush. Especially in summer nowadays that it's warmer and I try to use less powder, or I use more cream products to have a little bit of a more glowy look, I use the Nabla Precision powder brush from the same line, the ones with the wooden handle, and this one is perfect because it's actually very flat and very precise. It has a tip here and you can just go in the spots that you need the powder around your nose. It will get in all the nooks and crannies, and I'm really liking this. It's really precise and I really it applies the right amount of powder. It's good for precision applications. When it comes to bronzers, I have 3 options here. One is for big powder bronzers, and this is the Morphe M527. It is a very big, very fluffy brush. It has natural fibers, and yes, Morphe isn't the top quality brushes, but I have no complaints with the ones that I have, and this one right here could be softer, could shed a little bit less, but I've been now using it for at least 2 years and it works great, so I have no complaints there. And I use it, for example, with the butter bronzer because it has a big fluffy pan and then you can really swirl on your face. The other powder bronzer brush that I use is this Morphe MB41 from the black line, and this is also a very fluffy brush with a round cross section, and it's really soft. And this one I use especially for things like my hourglass powders palettes, which are very small, for example, or also the Becca palette that is small. And this one does still a very good job. It's a little bit more precise, but it's still very fluffy, so it will not over apply your bronzer, and it will give you a very nice blend. Because of the softness, it will blend the edges very nicely. Then finally, for cream bronzers, I like to use the Real Techniques stippling brush. This one right here is a very old one. I also have one from this limited edition with this pattern from a while ago, and I like these because of the dual fiber and stippling nature of it, but I don't use it as a stippling brush, so I don't stipple, I actually still swirl, but you can decide on how much pressure you apply, and in that way also with cream products it's easier to blend them. And I use this for cream also because synthetic fibers are easier to clean than natural fibers, and cream products will come off easier. So yeah, this is my favorite for cream bronzers. Then we move on to blush. Again, 2 favorites, but there's many options. My favorite powder blush brush is this one right here, which is the Zoeva 127 Luxe Sheer Cheek, not crease, but cheek. It is an angled natural fiber brush, natural hair brush, and it is extremely soft and very, I don't know, I like that I can angle it, because how I apply brush is this direction upwards like this, and it's very soft, so I can blend as well as apply concentrated color. So this one is absolutely my favorite. I could not live without this, and especially like not only the shape but especially the bristles and the way it's made, I really like this. On the other hand, I have a lot of second favorites for blush, and let's start with a cousin of the one that I showed you. This is a 126 Luxe Cheek Finish, and the difference is that this is not angled and it's a little bit less soft, and I again like the angle for the shape of blush that I like to use, but this is more of a sweeping in this direction type of motion, and again, great bristle quality, and Zoeva brushes are some of my favorites. I have a lot of them in my collection. Another similar shape is the Nabla Bon Mine. This one is thinner and a little bit more dense than the previous two. And again, you have to swipe like this instead of going like this. You see the difference? And that is something that is what you're used to using, and I prefer the angled brush than this one. But this one is very nice because it is synthetic brushes. You can use it for both powder and cream blushes, and overall it works well. Just the shape is for me a little bit uncomfortable. And then you can also use something similar again, which is this Real Techniques cheek brush. Again, paddle type brush. This is more firm, again, synthetic, but a little bit more firm, a little bit more pigment, and overall a little bit more control, but more pigmentation and more product application. You get a little bit of a less airbrushed finish the denser the fibers are, especially for these powder products. And then we have three that I find very similar, which are these three. It's the Real Techniques blush brush, a staple. This is one of these tapered, very, very fluffy brushes. There's stuff flying, but a great blush brush by itself. I find that for me it's big. You see that I cannot, like, if I put my blush here, it's pretty much taking half of my face up. So for me, this is a little bit on the big side. A smaller version is the Morphe E3, and still again a tapered brush. It's a little bit more firm and dense, and you can use this also for powder, for example. It would work that way as well. It's a good quality brush. The E line of Morphe has really good quality brushes. And then another Zoeva, the Luxe Face Definer, which is this big fluffy thing, and it's similar to the blush brush by Real Techniques. It's just a little bit more dense and more tape and smaller, let's say. It plays less, so it doesn't take up my face as much. But this is not the type of, again, blush brushes that I prefer. This one is my favorite. Moving on to one relatively new favorite that is for cream blushes, and it is the Nabla Foundation Buffer Brush. Again, all credit to this discovery to my friend Julia. I was talking to her that I wasn't liking the effect of this on foundation, mainly because it's so small and it takes so long to buff, and I think that it left a little bit of a streaky finish to my base. But she suggested to try it with cream blush, and it works fantastic. So I always start by stippling and then gently buffing, and this one works really well. It is quite sturdy, but not as sturdy as the foundation brushes we looked at, and it is small, so it's very precise, but it blends out nicely the edges as well. So I'm really liking this for this application, and it went from a brush that I would never use to one of my favorite brushes now. Next up, concealer brushes. My favorite is this one from Colourpop, which has no name, but I think it's like the small it's the small fluffy brush, I think it's called. It has a weird name. I'll put all the names in the description box. And this is my favorite for blending out foundation. It's soft, synthetic, but you can really be also quite precise under the eye. So I really like this. It blends out concealer really, really well. And for spot concealing, I love these small, dense brushes right here. This one is the Deluxe Crease Brush by Real Techniques. I have a ton of these. This is from like one of their first collections ever, 5-6 years ago. And it's really good for spot concealing and blending out. You just stipple, tap, tap, and it blends out the concealer really well. So I always have one of these at hand. And then two other options for concealer brushes are these two. One of these is the setting brush by Real Techniques. I love this. I love the shape, but mine are starting to get a little bit scratchy, so that's why I'm using the other one. This one is even, let's say, a little bit lower coverage than the Colourpop one. You can see in shape they differ quite a bit. This one is tapered, and it thins out on the top also when it comes to density of bristles. I guess that's what tapered means. Whereas this one is more flat, and they're both a nice thin section, but this one is again a little bit more tapered. It sprays out and then goes up with less brushes, with less bristles. So this one will give you lower coverage, this one will give you a bit more, but I'm finding that mine are in need of a refresh. I have these brushes for many years and they're getting a little bit scratchy. So yeah, that is that, but these two are great options. And then one that I do not like as much is the Face Shape by Zoeva. This is the 110, and the reason is that it's quite dense, so it's okay to really pack it on, but I don't get a very nice blend with my foundation without moving my foundation underneath. So I don't really love this one as much, but it's an option. Moving on to contour. I don't contour, but when I did contour, I used a few different brushes. One is the contour brush, sculpting brush by Real Techniques, and this is a very dense, short bristled brush, and it's really good to apply in a very precise and sharp way your contour. And then what I did was just blend upwards. Instead, if you want something a little bit more natural, a little bit more blended out, they have the, this is the contour brush, that was the sculpting brush. They have the contour brush, which is a bit softer bristles, quite round and tapered. It's as if it's a smaller version of the blush brush, very small. It's softer than the other brush and than the sculpting brush, and it's a better, it's a softer contour. And then newer to my collection is this guy right here, which is the Nabla Cheek Shaper, which instead is very soft on the tip, but it's very pointy. So you can actually kind of blend out a sharp contour by itself. And I'm finding I'm really liking this type of brush for contour. Moving on to highlighter brushes, and here again there's two different types, or even three I would say. One that I'm really enjoying right now is the Nabla Highlighter brush. This is the version from a Christmas collection they had, but they re-released this also more recently. It's always sold out and it's extremely soft, very small, but you can really get a nice precise application. It blends out the highlighter really well, and you can do all of the detail highlighting as well. I find it really nice because indeed, you can be precise or just blend out using the side. It is again very soft and givey, very tiny. I mean, it's the size, it's smaller than my finger. It's a very small brush, but I'm really enjoying it lately. A more traditional type of highlighter brush is this guy right here. This is the Morphe R36. I also have the M501, which are very similar. I prefer the rose gold one, the R36, because it's a bit smaller in terms of cross section. There's a little bit less bristles and less product gets on your cheek, and you can be a little bit more precise, but you don't have to apply it quite as laying down as the other one, because the cross section is a bit bigger. You can actually apply it like this instead of like this, let's say. And this one right here I find a bit too big. I find that then I get highlighter lower than I'd like it to be, but the 501 is a very famous one from Morphe, so that's why I wanted to mention it. And then you have a fan brush. I am not a huge fan of fan brushes, and I only have one. This is the Real Techniques fan brush, and this, as you can see, is a dual fiber type of fan brush. And the reason why I like it is to use highlighters that are a little bit too dark for me. I apply much less product and it gets a less opaque application if I apply it with this. I can get much lighter application if I just use the bristles that are up top, because they're so scarce. And I'm actually liking using it specifically with Nabla Lucent Jungle, because it is a little bit of a darker highlighter, but I find that when it's sheared out on top, maybe I can actually apply some right now to show you. When it's applied on top of a blush or in general, it looks really good. Just tap off the excess. And I already have Amnesia that I applied with the other Nabla brush, but if you apply a very small amount with a fan brush, this looks very nice as well, and it gives a little bit of a warmer tone I need to make it even now, on the highlight. And yeah, other fan brushes that are out on the market can be more dense, and then they will have the same effect as one of these, just in a fan shape. But I like this because it applies such sheer layer of highlight, and I'm actually not so much into that highlight stripe or a very visible highlight. I like it better if it is kind of, if it looks like it's a sheen on top of my blush. Let's put it that way. I have two final eye brushes, and these are for under eye setting powder. Specifically, it is something that right now I'm not doing, but in the winter I do a little bit more, especially if I want to use something a bit more illuminating, or if you want to try, let's not per se baking, but applying a little bit of a thicker layer of powder under your eyes. These two are my favorites. One is the Luxe Highlight by Zoeva, the 105. And for highlight, I find it's too big, but under the eye, it's perfect to press powder in there. And I really like this brush, and all of the Zoeva Luxe ones, the white bristle ones, are super nice. And then this is the Morphe E48, which is a similar type of brush, and it's kind of the smaller version of the big one I showed you, the E3. And I like both of these, and specifically here again for under the eyes. However, I don't use these very often, so they're actually in my spare pile, because nowadays I don't even have concealer on right now. Like I'm not even wearing much makeup on for my base. So I think the final thing that I'd like to mention here among my favorite face brushes is the Linda Hallberg Powder Puff. I have this and I wanted to mention it. It's actually dirty. I should clean it. And this is for me specifically to apply a lot of powder, or to really press it into the skin. And it's actually, yeah, it gives me a full coverage effect. So this is something that I will use rarely, and only if I have to have a base that lasts a long time, and that I really press into the skin. And to be honest, the effect to me doesn't look very natural, but it looks very perfected. So that's something you like. This one is a great option. I bought it on sale on Beauty Bay, and I think it's €11 full price, and I bought it for €8, something like that. So it's definitely on the affordable side. And since it took so long, we're breaking up this video in two parts, and we're gonna do the eye brushes next in a separate video, so stay tuned for that coming up. I hope you enjoyed this, I don't know, cruise through my favorite face brushes and how I use them. Let me know if you have any questions down below. What are your favorite brushes? And you'll find all the names and numbers in the description box down below. And thank you so much for watching again. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys!